Hey, are you guys there? Sarah. Good morning, Sarah. Good morning, Jonas.
Hi, Danielle.
Oh, good.
Good morning, you guys. Oh, good. I'm glad somebody else is on. We were starting to worry, Jonas, that that not every, since nobody else was here, that people had trouble or something.
Well, I'm extra early today because I wanted to make sure that I don't know why. It's not like a Zoom link ever failed me, but it's a new one, and I just wanted to make sure it was working. And Commissioner and I, we do an 8:30 check-in every day, and usually before the meetings they can get close to 9:30, but not today. I think he's prepared.
Oh, Hans got on.
Oh, good. And Hans was there. Okay, good.
Hi, Hans.
Morning, Jonas.
Okay, well, I won't text.
Good morning, Hans. Hans.
Good morning, Hans.
Good morning, Danielle.
I'm like, I have to learn how to pronounce people's names.
I really appreciate that way of thinking, Danielle. I've been called Jason and Josh way too much in my life.
Mine is always my last name, actually. People always want to put the umlaut above the U for me. And it's, it's pronounced just like it looks, Muller. There's no Mueller, there's no, they always want to add the E or the umlaut above it. And it's like, no, just pronounce it like it looks.
Just say the letters. I'm gonna step away for a few minutes.
Good morning, Judy.
Hello, I had to unmute myself.
Okay, I'm just making sure you can hear. Good
Right.
morning, Commissioner Bird. Oh. Good morning, Commissioner Bird. Good morning, Commissioner Byrd. Can you hear me?
He's probably just filling up the coffee mug.
Yeah, he usually says good morning right away. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Renee.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, thank you.
I'm just testing to make sure everybody can hear us okay.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Good. Good morning, Wayne.
Good morning, everybody.
Good.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner Byrd.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Sounds like Danielle.
Yes.
All right. Looks like Danielle and Renee go to the same tanning salon.
No tanning salons for me, Commissioner.
I can see that. You're very pale there.
Am I? Wow.
Yeah, you look like the Michelin Man.
Oh, really? Does it really show something on your end?
Yeah, this shows it looks like the Michelin Man. Just a white blob head and shoulders.
Wow. Okay. I might have to change my background.
I'm not seeing anything. I don't know what Commissioner Byrd is seeing.
I think he's just kidding, Miguel.
He's been on.
He's gonna keep rolling with that joke for a while.
Yes.
I know.
No, see, now I got to take a picture to prove you all wrong. I'll send it to Miguel because I was texting him recently, simply because he hadn't been able to get my phone to work. Just throwing you under the bus there, Miguel.
By the way, I'm helping Sarah here. So
Oh, is that way? Okay. I saw her sign light up, but it didn't sound like her, but I didn't want to say anything. I don't know her well enough yet.
Just assumed she had a deep voice.
Yeah. I figured, another cup of coffee should come around, so I wasn't going to say anything. So Miguel can see what I see. I see a bunch of little Michelin men. That's why I'm always bugging Renee about her tan.
No picture today, Commissioner Byrd.
I need to find the photographer that John Reynolds used, though. Man, if he could do some improvements on me, I'd put my picture up there. but nobody wants to see that. So I just put a nice green field. There's a bunch on this morning early.
Yes, I think we're just trying to make sure everything's going to run smoothly without Jason not being here for the first time.
Are you kidding me? This is going to be the best meeting we've ever had.
Well, I'm glad he's not listening.
Oh, he probably is. He's on YouTube. Well, it's not recording yet, is it? I was going to say it's on YouTube, but it's all right. Somebody will tell him. So good morning, Chief. I see your name up there. Are you with us yet?
Good morning, Commissioner. I am.
Good, good. I hope things are going well for you.
They are. We're just, or I am just sitting around hoping that this rain comes in like they keep promising it will.
Oh, man. I know. I sure hope so. I know they got a little bit down in Rio Doso. They had a little snow and rain yesterday morning. I sure hope that helped them.
Did they? Good, good.
So, yeah, they need it. They probably need it worse than any of us right now. But once they're done with it, I hope they send it on around the state.
For sure. Well, just let us know when you're ready to get that John Reynolds glamour shot done, and we'll get that taken care of for you.
That's true. I could put my glamour shot picture up there, but it make Commissioner Maestas look, small in comparison. Still on mute, Commissioner.
I was going to say that just the words Commissioner Byrd and glamour don't seem to go together, but who knows? We'll wait to see the picture, I guess. The doctor picture.
You haven't seen me all dolled up, man. Well, let's keep that in the closet. We'll talk about that later.
Boy, I don't know.
Good morning, Commissioner.
I just heard the last couple comments there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I see you squirming in your chair now. Oh, dang, hot mic. Oh, man.
Sarah, we may need to, make you the, we might need to give you the mute button to control these guys.
Or we can broadcast on a delay.
Yeah, do like the radio stations and broadcast delayed. Mute that.
Oh, and good morning, everyone. Great to see you all, or some of you.
Morning.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
I see that Commissioner Vicente Aguilar is on. Good morning, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good to hear your voice. I hope you're doing well as well.
I'm doing good. You caught me with a mouthful, so sorry about that.
I have been working to be a waiter. I'm going to have to do that after this tent. So how am I doing?
That's great.
Okay, I see Cynthia's on, and
yeah,
I see Wayne is on.
Morning,
and
Mr.
Are we going to have the agenda on the screen today, Sarah?
I'm sorry, Miguel was talking to me and I didn't hear what you said. Can you repeat that?
Okay. I was just asking if we're going to have the agenda on the screen today.
Yes, sir. I'm planning on it.
Okay, I think
Are you ready for that now?
Yeah, I think we're ready to go.
Okay, great. I will get that going.
I hear something good. You can do just that.
Okay, do you see it?
Yeah, looking good.
Great.
Okay, we're going to find out real quickly whether you're an upgrade from Jason on doing this.
Well, those are really big shoes to fill. So
Yeah,
I doubt I'm an upgrade, but hopefully I can keep things going.
No
Yeah,
pressure.
Jason does wear clown shoes.
No pressure, and that was an uncalled for dig. But anyway, just for that, you get to lead off with the pledge. Also, because you're so good at it.
Oh, gee, thanks. I was going to say, please stand, but anyway. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Thank you, Commissioner Byrd. Consideration and approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to pay the respect to our staff members. They're listed twice. This is regarding the contract that's on the agenda, as well as the presentation from Jim Williamson and Annette Reynolds regarding the operating budget. So they are noted on the agenda, two different places. I would like to allow them to do a presentation regarding their operating budget right after the first presentation that is listed, so that they can finish their job and continue to work on other tasks on their plate. Mr. Chairman, that is my request. If we can move up Jim Williamson and Annette Reynolds' presentation up under.
Oh, they're there listed at the end. Is Jim, are you on?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, yes, we're on.
Yeah, does that work for you?
Absolutely, sir. It does.
Okay. Well, good suggestion.
Yes.
So we're seconding with that adjustment.
I'll second that.
Okay. And would you take the roll, Mike?
My understanding is that this is a motion to approve the agenda with item Roman numeral 10 moved up. I believe that would be after Roman numeral 5, the presentation. I'm sorry, after Roman numeral 6, the consideration and approval of contracts. Is that the case?
Correct.
Okay.
I think it's 10 and 11.
I have 11 as communications with Chief of Staff.
So, yeah, I see it as just 10.
Okay.
Or X.
My bad.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what that means.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
as the movement, I accept the friendly amendment.
Thank you. Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just muting my phone. That was it dinging. Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas.
Aye.
Commissioner Hall.
Aye.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Aye.
Commissioner Fishman.
Aye.
The agenda as amended is approved by a vote of 5-0.
Very thoughtful. Thank you, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar. Introduction of special guests. Do we have any?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. We do not have any public comment for today.
Okay. Was that Danielle?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. Just want to keep track of all the voices here. Public comment.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that was what Danielle was actually responding to.
Oh, okay. So no public comment, no special guests. So next we have the presentation regarding the 2021 Community Solar Act. And John and Rick, please take it away.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is John Reynolds with the Utility Division. I have been following the community solar legislation at least since 2017, and speaking to Rick this morning, and he and I have been kind of silent collaborators on it in a way, and by my following and working on fiscal impact reports related to these bills, and Rick working much harder through 4 legislative sessions to get to where we are today with the Community Solar Act. So Rick Gilliam is the Senior Program Director at Vote Solar. He was the sponsors expert, as I mentioned to you before. And so he's going to present to you the Community Solar Act and some of the implications for New Mexico. I have focused more on the details of rate making, and we can try to answer questions as we go. So Rick, good morning. Welcome to the PRC, and thank you for your input about this matter. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this today. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. And John, will you be doing the slides? I put together a small presentation.
The slides, I have the slides. I don't know who can, I've sent them to Sarah about probably 3 or 4 minutes ago. I wasn't sure who has the slides at this point.
I can let anybody share the screen if you want to run your own presentation, or I can do it. What would work best for you, Mr. Gilliam?
If you don't mind doing it, that would be great, Sarah.
Okay.
Well, as John said, I'm Rick Gilliam with Vote Solar. I've worked on regulatory issues in New Mexico for probably about 20 years now. And it's always a great place to work. The community solar bill is somewhat of a recent concept. Actually, I think the first community solar bill was in Colorado in 2011. And so we've learned a lot from our experience here, and I hope to share some of that with you today. There we go. Okay. Great. Thanks, Sarah. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh, I hate it when that happens. That font didn't come out very well, but we'll work through it. So I wanted to start out just with a picture of what community solar is, because I think we all have an idea in our heads of what it means, but it's actually a very simple concept. The way to think about it is like aggregating a number of rooftop solar systems into a single combined system that's not on the site of the customer that's using the electricity from the solar system. So that facility then feeds electricity into the distribution system of the host utility, of the qualifying utility, and that's how the power gets to the customer. So the picture, I think, is just important to keep in mind as we go through this. New Mexico is the 21st state, plus DC, that have formal, and that is, legally, statutorily enabled community solar programs. Let's go ahead to the next slide, Sarah. So the objectives of community solar is, the number one objective is accessibility. As we all know, not everybody has a roof that that will allow solar to be installed for, could be physical reasons, maybe shading, but the more popular type of customer are those that just simply have no roof at all of their own. They're renters, they may live in apartment buildings, or they may not be able to afford solar, because solar, as we know, rooftop solar that is, has a fairly high upfront cost. And while that can be financed for those with the means and the proper FICO scores, not everybody is able to avail themselves of the financial ability as well. So accessibility is the key here. And the point is that solar provides benefits, it provides economic benefits to the customer, and that customer then can see bill savings on their bill from the utility as a result of utilizing solar from another resource, another source that is. The Community Solar Act in New Mexico has a special emphasis on tribal communities and low-income neighborhoods and what we call income qualified customers of all types. This has been a really important part of the bill each year in New Mexico. And the Senate Memorial 63 working group that worked all last summer on this bill developed what I think is a very good approach to allowing income qualified customers access to community solar. So as I said, the second point here is consumer bill savings. While utilities are doing a lot more with solar these days, and that should help to mitigate the costs of fossil fuels over time, it doesn't inure to individual customers very quickly. In other words, while there's been a lot of utility scale solar being installed, we haven't seen a lot of rate decreases from utilities, and not just New Mexico, but across the country. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which we can talk about at some other time. But to get the real direct benefits of solar, you either need to have it on your roof or have it close by so that you can access it directly and have it displace some of the utility supplied electricity. And that's what community solar does. So the types of customers that can benefit from community solar are listed here: small businesses, homeowners, local governments, schools, community colleges, and I don't have to read the list to you, you can read it yourself. But suffice to say that the concept here is accessibility and reducing cost to customers. Thirdly, there are the economic benefits of community solar development. Jobs are created. There can be workforce programs for lower income customers as well. Lease payments and private investments in upgrading the grid. And one thing that fell off the slide here because of the font issue is the economic benefits to the state and local governments through taxes. Let's go ahead to the next slide, Sarah. So the commission is well aware that there is a section of the bill that requires the commission to develop a rulemaking on to implement the Community Solar Act. I'm not going to step through each of those elements, but I do want to touch on a few of the important points that we heard a lot about in the legislative process. First is the bill credit, and this is the credit that customers will get on their utility bill for the energy that they purchase as a subscriber from the community solar facility. That bill credit is defined in the Act as the retail rate less distribution costs, which sounds simple, of course, but as you dive into the details, with rate making, it's always more complicated than it appears on the surface. There was concern raised by some in the legislative process about cross subsidization. So there is language in the bill that addresses and effectively caps the amount of subsidy that can occur between subscribers and non-subscribers. The second important element, in my view, is the capacity allocation process. And that's simply, there's likely to be a lot more projects that would like to be built in the state than there's room to build under the 200 megawatt cap over the 2.5 years or so that we have. So the commission will need to develop a process, some sort of a competitive bidding process has been used in other states to select the best projects. And, you know, best is obviously a term that can be interpreted in many different ways, but there are certain requirements of each project. For instance, the next bullet, which is the low income carve out, is required for each project now. But clearly the commission would want to encourage projects that provide the most benefits to the state of New Mexico. So moving to the low income carve out, each project, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Rick, yeah, just a quick question on, I have not had a chance to catch up with the final version of the bill that passed. Under what circumstances does a subsidy occur? A cross subsidization? What, can you describe that pretty succinctly, or is it more complicated than that?
I can describe what other people felt was the source of the subsidy. I myself do not believe that a subsidy exists, but that will be part of, I'm sure, a lively discussion we'll have during the rulemaking process, the workshop process. But essentially, when a customer receives energy through a subscription to community solar, it means they're purchasing less energy from the utility, the host utility. And as a result, the utilities in particular were concerned that reduced revenue would have to be made up by other customers, that revenue for the generation and transmission system. And I don't want to, get into a debate on both sides right here, but that's what folks were concerned about during the legislative process.
So real quickly, the counter argument to that, since you won't go there, I will real quick. The counter argument would be that theoretically the utility should be adjusting its level of resources over time to account for that.
That's right. That's right. And in rate making, as you know, customers pay for what they use. And if you're not using the generation system and the transmission system, you shouldn't have to pay for it.
Okay. Go. Sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to get some clarity there.
Not at all. Not at all. We'll have lots more discussions about that, I'm sure. As the bill turned out, there were some amendments, and the low income piece now requires that 30% of each project is carved out for low income or income qualified customers. And when I say income qualified customers, that includes low income service providers. So Santa Fe Housing Authority, for instance, would be an example of somebody who could be a subscriber, which would probably be the most effective way in the early years, the early times, to make this work. So then moving on, the next important provision is consumer protection. The commission is asked to come up with uniform disclosure forms for subscribers. There has been concern raised by some that there are people who market these products that may not be completely on the up and up. So the uniform disclosure form is important there to make sure that the project is legitimate and is good for consumers. And then finally, as I'm sure you all know, this is really in the nature of a pilot program almost. And the first few years, we'll go through this process and develop up to 200 megawatts of community solar in New Mexico. And the commission then reports back to the legislature beginning of November of 2024 on all the various elements that the bill contains. And one thing I want to mention, it also unfortunately fell off this slide, is that for this process, this rulemaking process, and for really any of the commission's needs regarding community solar, the National Renewable Energy Lab can provide technical assistance. Not so much policy oriented, that's your job, but technical assistance in understanding how community solar works and any other technical matters that the commission may have questions about. It's through a partnership called the National Community Solar Partnership, and I'm happy to put your folks in touch with the people at NREL to get that technical assistance. Okay, yeah, so next steps, there's rulemaking parameters, probably the first element to address, and you all at the commission are probably already down the road a little bit on some of these steps, but you know what needs to be addressed. I think it's laid out pretty clearly in Section 7 of the Community Solar Act. What I've found in other states that seems to work well, and I think New Mexico, that you guys at the PRC tend to follow the same pattern, is you have a series of either public workshops or comments filed by interested parties, reply comments, in combination with workshops to gather as much information as you can from stakeholders. And the Community Solar Act does lay out a specific list of types of stakeholders that it hopes the commission will encourage to participate in this process. After that development of information and comments and replies and workshops, then the commission will design and develop the actual rules and release a notice of proposed rulemaking, or NOPR. And then typically there's comments on the initial NOPR, reply comments, and then final rules are released. And the date, as you all are aware, is April 1, 2022. I think that is the end of the gist of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any other questions that anybody may have. And I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, John.
Yeah, just follow up and kind of close out the comments. I mean, thank you, Rick. I appreciate the presentation very much. And I just wanted to mention that we subsequent, during the debate at the legislature, and it has ratcheted it up since the approval of the bill and now the passage of the act, we have had a lot of inquiries, largely from community solar developers across the country, asking questions such as, what's the plan? I mean, how do we move forward? How do we find out what the grid looks like so we can, try to work on where we should focus our efforts, and who should we get in touch with? So there's a lot of interest in this. And in the last couple of days before this presentation, I reached out to the 3 investor-owned electric utilities, to the Co-op Association, and they've all articulated what I've felt. I mean, their inquiries that they're receiving about interconnections has gone up significantly. All 3 IOUs across the co-ops. And the co-ops, by the way, are not part of the CAP, nor are the native community solar project. So they're not subject to the 200 megawatt statewide cap. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but I believe that's the case. And so there's a lot of interest, and you know, I've taken a note of the people who've called me. I've taken notes of their questions and suggestions, but I do think we need to, and I don't want to step ahead of the next presentation, but you know, we will need to have significant stakeholder engagement at the outset. Get some feedback from utilities, from developers, and the statute provides for us to solicit input across the board. And I just wanted to give you a flavor of what I have seen, and maybe commissioners have seen that as well. So we are, you know, as an agency, it's a significant undertaking for us. I mean, it will take a good bit of effort. I mean, the commission administers and enforces the rules, and I'm quoting language from the Act, including regulation of subscriber organizations, oversight and review of customer protections established pursuant to the Act. So, I mean, we are the primary agency with oversight of community solar at this point going forward. So look forward to the work and learning a lot. And thank you, Mr. Chair and commissioners, for hearing out Rick. And Rick, thank you a lot for what you've done.
Well, thank you for allowing me to present to you today. And we at Vote Solar fully anticipate participating in whatever process that you all go forward with at the commission.
Don't go away quite yet, Rick.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Hall.
Yeah, you know, I was following along in the statute while Rick was describing particularly the rulemaking requirements. And that date is certainly indeed April 1st, 2022. But I have a question about the statewide cap. I noticed it says that we have to provide an initial statewide capacity program cap of 200 megawatts, alternating current, proportionately allocated to investor-owned utilities until November 1, 2024. And then in the next bullet, it says establish an annual statewide capacity program cap to be in effect after November 1, 2024. And it doesn't look to me from the rest of the section that there's any guidance about what the subsequent cap after November 1, 2024 would be. So I wanted to ask Rick, or maybe even John, but Rick probably, because I think you were a little closer to the legislature, was that cap contemplated to go up or go down, or what? Why do they leave it ambiguous what the magnitude of the cap after November 1, 2024 would be?
Well, yes, I mean, in my view, the legislature left it to the subject matter experts at the PRC to determine, based on what occurs over the next 2.5, 3 years, to determine what an appropriate cap, if any, should be going forward beyond 2024.
If any. So you mean there was some anticipation that there might not need to be any cap thereafter?
Because the legislature did not specify a cap, I mean, at least in my mind, that leaves the door open for the commission to use its discretion to determine if there should be a cap at all.
I see. I guess I would anticipate we just wanted to have a period of time when we could see how it penciled out, what the appetite was for it, what sort of problems arose, things like that. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
I'd just point out that I believe there is a cap on the size of a community solar installation, which is 5 megawatts. Is that correct, Rick?
Yes.
So that 200 megawatt cap would allow for a minimum of 40 separate community solar projects.
I read that as a maximum of 40.
Well, no, because you could have a 2 megawatt, let's say they were all 2 megawatts, you could have 100 2 megawatt community solar projects if they were smaller than 5 megawatts.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, sure.
So I just want to point out that if these projects are penciling out and are popular, it has the potential to become, a significant amount of work for the agency. And, we need to be letting people know what it takes to administer. And so I'm hopeful that as things develop, and we're not shy, if community solar really takes a strong foothold in being sure we get the right resources to protect the public and be sure all these projects are on the up and up. So,
If I might add to that, Commissioner, along the same lines, I mentioned the low income carve out is 30% per project. I've had some initial discussions with low income service providers that are interested in potentially doing 100% low income projects because they can avail themselves of better financing, for instance. I think you raised a good point. We should think about when there's any kind of a cap or limit that doesn't, it may limit a smaller number, but it doesn't preclude a larger number.
Mm-hmm.
Any other commissioner comments, questions?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Masters.
Thanks for that presentation, Rick. One of your bullets in your slides mentioned that this project will spur private investments in upgrading the grid. And obviously we have some IOUs who have feeder lines that are at capacity, and it's estimated that to upgrade each feeder line will cost about $1 million. So will the status of feeder lines determine the location of projects? And if not, if a project is located by a feeder line that requires investment, how is that going to minimize cross subsidization? So if you could just briefly address the grid impacts and how to avoid cross subsidization as a consequence of locating a community solar project in general.
Yes, it's a great question. And as you can imagine, there are many factors that go into the siting of a project. Access to the grid is one, cost of land is another, and other factors as well. But you raise a good point, and my guess would be that particularly in the first couple of years, most of the projects will be sited near substations where those types of upgrades are not required, or the upgrades required are minimal. But over time, it may prove to be cost effective for a community solar project to spend that $1 million in upgrading, whether it's a circuit or a substation, to be able to accommodate, say, a 3 to 5 megawatt project. And in the whole package of the project costs and finances, it still is a viable project and can provide savings and benefits to subscribers.
Thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And Rick, just again, for my own clarification, the legislation does allow for any distribution upgrades that are required by the project to be paid for by the project developers?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. If there are no other questions, thank you, Rick. Let's go ahead to our budget presentation. And that's, item X. And Jim, feel free to, this is presentation from Jim and Annette on the budget. And guys, go ahead.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, my understanding that the Strategen contract would be reviewed first based on the amended agenda.
If you, okay. We can do it that way and that's better. So.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. The professional service contract before you is with Strategen Consulting in the amount of $60,000. The scope of work is on the screen, and that is to provide a consulting service to assist PRC staff in implementing the Community Solar Act, House Bill 84, which was discussed. The amount, the compensation would be $60,000, and services could be rendered both in FY21 and FY22. There is sufficient budget availability to proceed with this engagement, and the state's procurement code was followed. If the contract is approved by the commission, of course, ASD will work to expedite that, so service could begin as soon as possible. Upon approval by oversight agencies, we could even start the scope of work in FY21. And with that brief introduction, I stand for any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hall.
So I'm not familiar with Strategen. Was this a sole source, or was there a competitive bid, or how did we acquire their services?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Hall, there was 3 bids submitted. So it was a competitive bidding process. And this was the 2 other bidders were unable to perform the service in the time frame needed to meet the legislative mandate.
Okay, great.
And Jim, were there any folks outside the agency who participated in how we put together our request for proposal and that kind of stuff? Or was this basically an agency effort?
Mr. Chair, this was an agency effort.
Okay. Commissioners, any other questions?
Well, how soon can they start?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Hall, as you're aware, the oversight agency approval process can take some time, but we'll put that in our end.
Right.
And as soon as possible, we'll emphasize the need for the agency to comply with the mandate.
Great.
And Jim, were there any, what kind of experience does Strategen have in particular with community solar? Do they have a background working on those kinds of projects specifically?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, yes, they do have a lot of work in the community solar, and they're based out of California. And they've done work for other public utility commissions. So they have very good references.
Wonderful.
Terrific. Okay. Any other commissioner questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Yes, Jim, can you please explain how $60,000, how they came to that amount? Can you describe in detail what it applies to in reference to the $60,000? Were there any other quotes given below $60,000?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, yes, there were other quotes submitted on an hourly proposal. The $60,000 amount is the amount done by GSD to avoid the RFP process, which takes months and months. And so given the April 2020 deadline of having the services completed for the legislature, it was in our best interest to stay below that threshold of the 60,000. But yes, there were 2 other quotes. Yes, ma'am, on an hourly rate. And so in the compensation section, here are the hourly rates for Stratagen, $250 an hour for the director, and so on. But the services shall not exceed the $60,000 in a fiscal year. It would be performed in California, so there'd be no gross receipts tax applicable.
When you say it was an agency effort, was John Reynolds involved?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, it's my understanding that Mr. John Reynolds has received a copy of the draft contract. And that may be the extent of his involvement, but I'm not sure, ma'am.
Okay, can you disclose to the public the people that were involved in the agency effort?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, the quotes were obtained by Jonas Armstrong. He assisted with the quote process.
Is he the only individual that was, when you say it was an agency effort?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like a more strategic plan when we want to approve a contract for $60,000. I would like our utility director involved with the selection process. This raises a red flag for a commissioner's assistant pushing the envelope, and it's not good for the public. It's not good for Public Regulation Commission. That's my take on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Maestas.
As the commissioner who supervises the assistant involved, I too was very involved in this effort. Commissioner Vicente Aguilar may not recall, but when we talked about pooling funds into the contracts line item, we agreed that the advisory side would take the lead in procuring professional services for rulemaking. And we've been talking about this for, I think, months. We talked about the prioritization of the rulemaking. I think we talked about rate decoupling. Rate decoupling cannot proceed yet because we have an active case that's seeking to resolve key legal threshold questions. And I'm repeating myself in terms of what I said last week. In terms of transportation electrification, we already have plans submitted by all the investor-owned utilities. And so we have a little more time in transportation electrification to develop that rule. Now, in terms of community solar, we have a statutory deadline to develop these rules. And so we have been working on getting the budget together, and we all agreed there were no objections in terms of establishing community solar rulemaking as a priority, not just in the context of rulemaking, but in the context of budget decisions. And so my assistant Jonas worked with myself. I worked with Art O'Donnell too. And we came up with this scope that is very robust. We were very confident in it. We looked at the qualifications of the other providers. Stratagen is by far the most experienced that's out there that can perform the work in the time frame that we need. They've worked in states like Utah, Minnesota, Hawaii. They're putting together best practices, I think, for Ohio. So we're very confident in this provider. And I think, as John stated, we need to begin this process as soon as possible. And so for us to go through an RFP process and take months would set us back to the point where we wouldn't be able to meet that statutory mandate. And so the action item before you, members of the commission, we've been talking about this for months, and there was nothing nefarious about the procurement and the gathering of these bids. We did it in very close consultation and at the direction of Jim Williamson. So I'm a bit offended that there are these insinuations that there was anything improper done. We're thinking solely about this legislative mandate and moving forward with this rulemaking. So, Mr. Chair, I also stand for questions regarding the process that led us to this proposed contract that's before us for approval.
Any other? Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar. And by the way, just real quickly, I don't believe there was any insinuation that something intentionally nefarious was done. I want to give Commissioner Vicente Aguilar a little bit of credit there, but I think it's never a problem to take a look at a process and just be sure we understand it and feel comfortable. So with that said, go ahead, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a public meeting, and viewers are viewing the meeting through the YouTube and also from different perspectives. And we have worked really hard through the years to make sure that every item on the agenda is discussed and every item is detailed for the public, because after all, it is their money. It is their tax dollars. It's the government approval of the budget to the Public Regulation Commission. They have the right to know, and I have the right to know. I am a little bit concerned that the leading division under the Constitution were not involved in selecting the firm to carry out this project. I'm very concerned. I don't understand why our utility division director, John Reynolds, was left out of the loop. That is incorrect, in my opinion. We also have staff members that followed the legislation. They responded to the RFP process as it was requested. We received positive communications from LFC, how well we worked with the legislature within the last 60 days. I think, in my opinion, our staff should have been the prime negotiator to come to this conclusion. And that is my last comment, Mr. Chairman, in reference to this request on the contract.
Thank you, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar. John, are you on right now? John Reynolds?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm here.
Yeah, so why don't we get your perspective? This is a good issue to discuss. I don't think this is anything to have a fight over, quite honestly, but it is something we should discuss and just have clarity about how we communicate and move forward. And anyway, what are your thoughts in listening to Commissioner Vicente Aguilar?
Well, Commissioner, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, that's part of the reason why I'd asked Rick Gilliam to make the presentation today, was to start the discussion about how to move forward. I mean, Rick, with Vote Solar, he's not a developer. I don't think he has any financial interest in this. I felt like he would be objective about how we can move forward. And other states have done this. And one of the suggestions I received from him and a few others is, what do we need to reinvent the wheel as far as the commission rule on community solar? I mean, the constraints about the size of the facility, the cap, those might be unique to New Mexico, but I think the larger rule, I think, could, we could get some inspiration from what other states have done. I mean, that was kind of my thinking going forward. I knew that Commissioner Maestas had expressed a desire for a consultant. I guess I assumed it was for the commission per se, and not for staff. So, I mean, I'm a bit surprised, but in any case, I'm sure we would be happy to work with them. But I do know that a lot of stakeholders and the people that we do have to solicit information from pursuant to the statute will contribute a lot to this process. That's my expectation.
Mhm.
I don't know if that answers your question. I mean, but those are my thoughts at this point.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're feeling comfortable that you can work with these folks, but I do hear a little bit of sense of it wasn't totally clear to you that this rulemaking to some degree would be happening with this level of involvement from the commissioner and commissioner assistant level. Is that a good characterization of what you're saying or not?
Yeah, I mean, what I know is what I heard from Commissioner Maestas at the last couple of meetings about this. And I know this is high on his agenda, or at least he has expressed that. And again, Rick he mentioned NREL and this National Community Solar Partnership. I learned about that today. I haven't pursued that. It's just too fresh. Well, we have worked with NREL in the past on issues relating to the transition of towards more renewable energy and how best to address some of those challenges and transitioning away from fossil fuel. And so, so we have some experience with NREL, and that has been free in the past. I don't know if the support that Rick mentioned would be free or not. I just haven't had a chance to check into that.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Commissioner Hull.
A couple of things. One is I couldn't hear everything John just said. There was somebody was rattling papers or something. So, John, could you just repeat the last paragraph you stated, because there was a lot of interference.
Yes, Commissioner Hall and commissioners, I think you may have missed my point about NREL, the suggestion from Rick Gilliam that technical support was available from NREL. And I mentioned that we have worked in the past with NREL. I think you recall that, Commissioner Hall. And so that has been provided for free. I don't know if that's also the case for community solar. I would have to check into that.
Mr. Chair, I had a couple of things I just wanted to mention, which is that I recall very clearly when we were discussing in our discussions about our 2-year work plan, that this was definitely going to be more of a commission effort to take the lead on pursuing the rulemakings, given the urgent timeframes we have to face. And I had to go through the same process with trying to find someone when the group GridWorks was going to help us, and they were going to be funded by another source, and then that funding fell through, and we had to scramble and try to find enough bids, which we did, for an adequate procurement. But it has to happen within a quite short time frame. So, and one thing I became kind of acutely aware of was that it's not that easy to find people who are qualified to do the kind of work you need. This is in the areas we're working on, like interconnection rule or community solar rule or decoupling rule. You really have to work hard to find even 3 bids that are adequate. And, you know, I was reaching out to everybody I could ask to find out if they knew anybody who could help. And I can imagine Commissioner Maestas and Jonas probably had the same kind of flurry going on in their office. But what I thought our understanding was going forward from our work plan that we worked on was that this was a burden that the commission and advisory staff were going to take off of staff, because staff had their hands full just responding to the volume of cases we have. So I wasn't asking those questions just to insinuate anything. I just thought it was worthwhile to state that we've been following proper processes that are appropriate for short-term activities so that we can get to the work that we have to do, but that we actually were proceeding properly. That was my reason in asking that question. I asked because I think the public does want to ask those questions and hear the answers, and we gave the proper answer. I don't think anything, from what I heard from Commissioner Maestas and Jim, is that the process they pursued, although it's not the RFP process, but it's the appropriate process to go through under our very real and hard time constraints. So I think we should be proud of the steps we've taken so far, and at least the trajectory we're started on, because I know we're all really sincere about getting done what we see needs to be done in the next year and a half now. So I just want to, I guess, provide some reassurance to Commissioner Vicente Aguilar that I think everything from what I've heard and what I know I've done has been done above board and quickly and efficiently so that we can get down to really working through these rulemakings.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Maestas.
Just so I can maybe add some more history. If you recall, when we revisited the current fiscal year budget, we engaged in a discussion to determine if we could initiate a budget adjustment request to add to our contracts budget. And after doing so, I believe we were able to aggregate over 100,000. We had a subsequent discussion, and this was led by Jason Montoya, the previous chief of staff. And we had discussed roles and responsibilities in moving forward with priority procurements. And I recall very clearly that that the advisory side would take the lead in procurements regarding rulemakings. Since that discussion and us pooling money together in contracts, the utility division has hired a consultant to assist in the merger case. And as Commissioner Hall mentioned, she hired a consultant. It was a procurement under 20,000 to assist with meeting and workshop organizations. So what we did really, I think, led to some key timely procurements, not just in the utility division, on the advocacy side, but on the advisory side. And that's what this contract is. It just happens to be more than 20,000 that requires commission approval, but it's under 60,000, as Jim mentioned, and it doesn't require an RFP. So to me, this is a logical step in our desire, consistent with the 2-year work plan discussions that we had, to address priority rulemakings on the advisory side. And so I just wanted to clarify that for all the public watching on YouTube. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll make a quick comment here, which is I think the experience and background that they bring, and given the timeline we have, having someone like Strategen on board is very important. This is going to be a very high profile rulemaking. There's going to be lots of vendors and folks, lots of vendors who are certainly interested, There's going to be lots of folks in the community who are certainly interested. And we do have a tight timeline. As I read through the agreement, I was impressed with the specificity of the issues to be covered in the deliverables, which gave me some confidence that this vendor can really help us out. And but I will say there apparently was a little bit of confusion about what we were doing, and we can always communicate a little better. I certainly don't take any. I don't think anyone should take any offense at the questions Commissioner Vicente Aguilar was asking. Those are just good due diligence questions. And but certainly I feel pretty good about this contract based on what I've seen, and that given the short timeframes, we've acted in the appropriate manner. So at any point, at any rate, does anyone care to make a motion at this point?
For what?
Is that Commissioner Vicente Aguilar? Were you on there? I guess not.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is not right to leave our leading division out of the loop. It is not right. And yes, we can talk about a 2-year plan. We can send the request to our staff members, how we want it done, when we want it done, how soon we can get it done. That's the role of a commissioner. They can make recommendations to our staff, and the utilities division has to take on the project. And John Reynolds just mentioned a few minutes ago another firm that has assist Public Regulation Commission with no fee at all. So it's not going to change my perspective, because I speak for every ratepayer in New Mexico, whether it's IOUs or co-ops. We just need to do things the right way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts, and I do believe, just personally, and Joe, I'll get to you in a second, that we probably can communicate a little bit better with the utility division on this, but I certainly am very comfortable with what's come out of this process. Commissioner Hall, were you going to make a comment?
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay. Jim?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Byrd, let's commissioners first here, Jim.
Sorry.
No problem.
I really appreciate Commissioner Maestas and Jonas carrying the water on procuring a contractor and getting this contract put together with Jim's assistance. And like Commissioner Fishman said, I don't think there was any nefarious intent, but the fact that John just said he wasn't aware that this was for his staff is concerning. I think Commissioner Vicente Aguilar is right. He should have been completely in the loop to ensure that whatever services we procure fully integrate with our staff. We don't need duplicative measures, and we don't need big holes left in the system. So what I would like to ask, can we table this 1 week, let John and Commissioner Maestas go through the contract, make sure there's not something else that's should be stated or shouldn't be stated, and get staff's buy-in and full understanding of what it is we're about to spend, because if we're spending this much money on something that we didn't need, we're being wasteful, or if we're spending this much money on something that doesn't solve our problem, again, that's being wasteful. So I think this is a good contract. I didn't have a problem with it, but she brought up I didn't realize that John Reynolds had no involvement, no knowledge of what this was for. And I would like to see, I know we're in a hurry, but hopefully 7 days isn't gonna kill us. So I ask that we just table it 1 week, let John and them go through it one more time as an agency. I'm pretty certain Commissioner Maestas has crossed his T's and dotted his I's, but I do have reservations because staff was not aware of what this was going to be for.
Well, a motion to table under typical rules is not debatable.
Mr. Chairman,
I did not officially make a table. I asked that we consider tabling.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that. So Joe, give us a thought on that. Is that something you're open to?
Well, actually, not only are we running up against the April 1st, 2022 deadline to complete the rulemaking, but we have some procurement deadlines this fiscal year to get approval for the contract. That's why we're expediting it. And I will say that, my assistant did email the draft contract to John Reynolds last week. And I think John directed Jonas to consult with Rick, and Rick never responded to that inquiry. So we did provide the draft to John last week. We have received no comments. I'm okay with tabling this if John wants to take a look at it, but I have to ask Jim Williamson, if we wait a week, will this jeopardize getting the necessary approvals this fiscal year?
Yeah, this is use it or lose it money.
Yeah.
So it's
right,
important.
right.
So Jim, can you address that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair and Commissioner Maestas, the deadline to submit all professional service contracts for services to be rendered in FY21, this current fiscal year, is May the 7th, which is next Friday. And like you said, the bar was submitted, and we do have the budget availability in the 300 category. Any unused fund balances reverted back to the state's general fund at the end of the fiscal year. And we're also considering a website next open meeting to use that available budget as well. But that should answer your question, sir. Thank you.
So one final piece of input before we, decide on that. John, do you need to do any additional work on this to know that you're comfortable with this? I'm asking John Reynolds.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, ma'am, I'm looking at, I heard Commissioner Maestas, I may have received the contract, but I don't recall seeing it. But I've been busy with filing testimonies kind of back to back, and so it's possible I overlooked it. But I'm looking at the highlighted language on the screen now. Assist the agency in developing the scope of initial written comments to be submitted by stakeholders and so forth. I don't see any specific reference to the utility division, and I take Commissioner Maestas' statement at his word for sure that this is an undertaking from an advisory perspective, and that was my understanding. I stated it a little differently, but I think we share the same understanding about that. So that's my view at this point. I'm not suggesting I don't want to be the monkey wrench here. I think the commission understands the high visibility and the importance of getting this done right. And I certainly accept that.
I have to say my inclination is to say yes to this contract this week, get it underway, not push the deadline any tighter than we need to. I think that there's a very good commitment between staff and the commissioners that everybody's input is going to be into this rulemaking, and it's going to happen in a way that no one gets cut out of the decisions, and that certainly staff's not going to be put in a position where they're stuck with a rulemaking that makes their job more difficult or less effective than it should be. So I see nothing here that gets in the way of that involvement. So I'd have to say that just given that, I would move to pass the contract now that we've had a good discussion to be sure that as we move forward, we can close these communication loops a little better. And I do think that the issue is raised as made sense to raise. But on the other hand, I don't think it's a showstopper or even a show delayer at this point, so long as we commit to just keeping the communication loop open going forward.
Mr. Chair.
So with that, I would move to
I'll second that.
approve.
Yeah. Mr. Chair.
Yeah, yes, Commissioner Hall.
So I just wanted to mention also that just to clarify, the expertise that we're trying to acquire under this contract, I assume, is similar to the kind of expertise that I was able to see acquired for the interconnection rulemaking, which is not so much, not at all, really, a crafting of language, the content of which staff would want to have input on, but more the conduct of the rulemaking process itself, so that all stakeholders are heard, so it's conducted in a timely and orderly way, and all issues are heard and appropriately hashed out amongst interested stakeholders and put into a strong draft to be issued as a NOPR. And during that process itself, in the NOPR process is when staff would be able to comment, and certainly they can be invited to participate during the stakeholder process as well. Simply acquiring a contractor through these contracts, I don't think really does need to involve staff. It's a pretty much administrative action that we've undertaken as the commission with advisory staff to just take that burden off of staff's plate. And it's an administrative job, just finding someone who's qualified to do this role. But I don't think it impinges on staff's ability to exert their judgment on the content of the rule in any way. And, you know, we're just finding somebody who's qualified, who's best qualified to do this job. And I don't think that has to be an administrative burden borne by staff under our present circumstances, where they're needed for substantive work, not administrative work. So that was my understanding. And I just want to reiterate it because there is nothing at all and that was going on in my mind, and I'm sure not in Commissioner Maestas's mind or any of our minds, in terms of cutting staff out of selection of these contractors. So I just wanted to make that statement. I really think what we're trying to do is help the agency move forward as quickly as possible, especially given the fact that we want to get started during this particular fiscal year and time is running out. So we were lucky to do what I think we've accomplished so far. So.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Any other comments from commissioners before we go to a vote?
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
The only, I think, issue that I'd like to discuss maybe in a future meeting is, you know, in the context of the 2-year work plan, you went around the table asking each commissioner, what would you like to take the lead on in terms of rulemakings? You know, we have a backlog of rulemakings, and several, not all commissioners step forward to take the lead in these rulemakings. And so I think we need to discuss, what does that entail? Does that entail just being the lead, or does that entail procuring any necessary services, contractual or or gratis, because this kind of discussion really discourages initiative and taking the lead as you challenged us. And I'd just like to end with saying, maybe some other commissioners should step forward and take the lead in some of these rulemakings that need to happen. And so anyway, I want to be clear going forward what taking the lead on the advisory side entails.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone acted outside of their authority. Obviously, when we're doing this a little differently than it's been done in the past, and there's some communications loops to close that maybe we haven't had to look at the same way in the past. So again, I think everyone acted appropriately. Should we have communicated better? Probably yes. But that's not a knock on anybody. That's just a learning process. And so I don't have any heartburn over this personally. Any other comments?
Just for the record, I was misinformed. We did not send it to John Reynolds by email. We relied on John reviewing it through the agenda on Friday because of the timeline. So I just want to make that clear that we did not send it directly to John. We wanted to avoid any quorums. I think we asked Mike to disseminate it on our behalf, and I'm not sure that was done in advance of the agenda development. So we did make an attempt, but we did not send it directly to John.
Yeah. So John, you get credit for keeping track of your email. No knock on you there. Any other comments before Mike takes the roll? Go ahead, Mike.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to respond to some of the issues raised, some of the concerns?
Well, do you have,
Well, just some pertinent information. We were going to discuss this during the FY22 operating budget. House Bill 2, we were appropriated a $500,000 ability to seek a loan of $500,000 to address this rulemaking as well. So there's a lot of emphasis legislatively to procure this. So that might just your information. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, there's been a 4-year effort. There was an interim committee set up to get this thing passed. High visibility. They set a tight deadline to get rules in place. This is something that we want to execute on, in my opinion, and quickly.
And Mr. Chair, we 3 quotes were obtained in the competitive process. The other 2 bidders, there were conflicts, one with a potential conflict of interest and one with a scheduling conflict. So the state's procurement code was followed. So we only purchased the stuff based on agency needs. So everything was very much on the board. So thank you, sir.
Okay, keep trying to push this to a vote. Any other comments? Can we, and Mike, if not, Mike, please call the roll.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
Commissioner Fishman.
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas.
Aye.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
No.
Commissioner Hall.
Cynthia, are you on mute?
Yes, I said aye, sorry.
The contract is approved by a vote of 4-1.
Okay, thanks to everybody for a good discussion. I think going forward, we can, again, have a little more clarity and a little less confusion going forward, but it's a bit of a new process. And I think we'll all just do a better job of communicating going forward. So thanks for the great work. What I think is great work, Jim and Joe and Jonas. And I guess Arthur was a help there too. I was very impressed with the contract I looked at. So now on to the operating budget. Jim.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I am accompanied with Annette Reynolds, our Budget and Finance Director to review the FY22 operating budget. We're trying to make it very high level, but feel free to ask any questions at any time. This was the FY22 operating budget that was signed into law during the most recent 2021 legislative session, House Bill 2. So this is the agency roll-up. So this is the PRC in total. The agency submitted the appropriation request back in September 1st of 2020 for this request. So it takes a long time to go through the process. The request submitted was for $12,008,080. LFC's recommendation was adopted, which just reduces the amount appropriated from the request by 200,000. So that's not bad. I just wanted to congratulate our budget director for submitting a very well justified request, along with everyone who participated on the team during the hearings. So we were appropriated our request only excluding 200,000. And that was in P611. So that's in the system of policy and regulation that would cover commissioners, all the divisions basically, but ASD, chief of staff, and pipeline safety. So $100 or $100,000 was cut out of P611 from the request, as well as $100,000 out of P613 salary. This operating budget would begin on July 1st of 2021. So in about 2 months. A key difference from prior budgets is that with the fire marshal transitioning to the Homeland Security, of course, our FTE count was 166. We're dropping down to 119 with all those FTEs leaving. Historically, we were appropriated using the Fire Protection Fund and all that as a general revenue fund to support the agency's operating budget. And that, of course, is going away to Homeland Security. So we're going to, in future requests, we don't have that available at our disposal. So we're gonna have to really rely on base increases from general fund on future requests. And we did receive the information regarding the FY23 request. And we're really going to look at our agency needs based on communications during that hearing, and really true up what our true agency needs are at that time, to really true up so we can properly fund the agency. Another key issue is there is a 1.5% salary increase. That is for classified staff and exempt positions, including the chief of staff and division directors. So that increase is $170,600. So just in total, looking at the budget, the $10,178,100 is the majority, which is a salary and benefits of our agency budget. Contractual services, which we just discussed, that tends to be the contractual services, consulting work, $465,400. And then the other category, which primarily lies in travel, equipment, training, subscriptions, that would be the $1.1 million figure you see there. As we mentioned in the prior presentation, we were appropriated the ability to request a loan to implement the Senate Bill 84 Community Solar Act. And we were reimbursed $145,100 for the moving related costs that are incurred in FY21 and FY22. So we were able to reimburse ourselves for a lot of moving stuff we did pay for out of our operating budget, and that freed up budget availability in the contractual services 300 category. We can go into more detail. Annette's working very hard to implement this into the budget system, so it'll be ready to go by the LFC and DFA deadline. And with that breakdown and general overview, we stand for any questions. Thank you.
Wayne, are you on?
Yes,
Wait,
Mr. Chairman, I'm on.
Yeah, I just wanted to, before we go through any further discussion, I know you're just catching up with all this stuff, but I wanted to check in and see if you had any comments on this.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Good morning. I don't really have any comments. I think Jim covered it well. I think all in all, based on discussions with Jim and Jason and others, the commission did fairly well in this last legislative session. But again, as Jim mentioned, I think we need to start planning for the future now and for our next budget request, and ensure that with some of the changes that have occurred with the Fire Marshal's division moving out of the agency, some of the needs that commissioners have identified in terms of priorities, that we really focus on our FY23 budget request and start working with key legislators again, virtually immediately to make our case in terms of what we really need to fill out some of the remaining gaps that weren't filled in our upcoming FY22 request. But again, overall, Mr. Chairman, I think we'll be able to operate within the budget that was appropriated for us, and thank staff and NET in particular for all the hard work that goes into putting together an operating budget.
Thank you, Wayne. Okay, commissioners, any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and members of the commission. I reviewed the presentation by Jim and Annette. They have submitted their operating budget for FY22. When I came in to the commission January 2019, we had a former chief of staff that had two roles. He was an acting ASC director, and he was also the chief of staff. In my opinion, that is wrong. We approved just moments ago. I decided not to go with the contract. We wanted to avoid situations like that. And I have to say thank you to our chief of staff, Wayne Probst, to put this on the agenda this week. It is absolutely necessary for Jim Williamson and Annette Reynolds to share the work that they do on a daily basis to inform the commissioners what was paid for and what was reimbursed. So when I came in January 2019, we reached out for a new chief of staff. 2 months later, we got Jim Williamson on board, and we have come a long way. There's history to this organization. With the help with all members of the commission, we strive every day for the accountability, because it is the New Mexicans' money that we're talking about. So I just feel very grateful. I feel very grateful. This is a great start. Springtime is a time of new beginnings. Flowers begin to blossom. And this is just a good time to share what a great job Jim Williamson has done. He may have disagreed with other managers. He stood his ground. He always stated the expenditures are always according to the code, according to the rules, according to the policies. I just feel very good about this presentation, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other commissioner comments?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Hall.
I just wanted to also commend Jim and Annette. And Jim sounded particularly delighted that Annette had come in so close to what was going to pass muster with the legislature in terms of our budget. So I just know good work's being done there, and I appreciate them. That's all. That's it.
Okay. If there's no more comment, Jim, thank you very much. And Annette, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners.
Okay, we're on to consent action items. And, well, I will move to approve consent action items.
Second.
Got a second? Any discussion from commissioners? Lacking further discussion, Mike, please take the roll.
Commissioners, this is a vote on the consent action items. They consist of case 20-00200 TRM in the matter of the application of CSI Medical Flight Services LLC for a certificate to provide ambulance services. It's a potential order regarding application for certificate. Case 21-00077 TRM in the matter of the application of Gopher LLC for a certificate to provide non-emergency medical transport service. Also a potential order regarding application for certificate. Case 21-00061 TRM in the matter of the application of JJDAC DBA MedStar Ambulance for reissuance of certificate number 51164 to provide ambulance service. Also, this is a potential order regarding application for reissuance. Utility matters are case 20-00089 UT in the matter of the application for continuation of its fuel and purchase power adjustment clause, Kit Carson Electric Cooperative, a potential final order closing docket. Case 21-00098 UT in the matter of applications for 2022 broadband program support from the State Rural Universal Service Fund as per 17.11.10.31 NMAC, a potential order opening docket. And finally, case 20-00233 UT in the matter of the joint application of Valley Telephone Cooperative, Inc. and Copper Valley Telephone, Inc., providing notice of change in circumstances and requesting expedited approval for the transfer of certificate of convenience and necessity. It's a potential order regarding staff's motion to appoint a hearing examiner. I will take the roll. Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Aye.
Commissioner Hall.
Aye.
Commissioner Fishman.
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas.
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
The consent action item agendas are approved by a vote of 5-0.
Very good. Let's get on to regular action items. And we're talking case 21-00096 in the matter of the application of Zia Natural Gas Company for an expedited adjustment to its purchased gas adjustment clause. Judy, please get us informed.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This matter comes before you today on the application filed by Zia Natural Gas on April 19th, 2021, pursuant to 17.10.640.14 and 15 for an expedited adjustment of its purchase gas adjustment clause, also referred to as Pgac. You may recall, because Zia had come in previously on a financing case in case number 21-00048 UT, that Zia experienced the severe weather event in February, which caused an extraordinary price increase of natural gases. And Zia had to file an application to obtain financing of approximately 18 million in order to pay its gas supply costs. Now Zia's application states that it intends to prepay the loan in order to reduce interest payments. And the application requests the commission approve a temporary adjustment through September 2022 to its Pgac in order to spread out the recovery of the extraordinary costs due to the weather event. Zia proposes to adjust its Pgac and spread out the recovery over 17 months to mitigate bill impacts to customers and to clear the debt that I previously described, where it needed to borrow 18 million. This would be instead of recovering its purchase gas costs within 12 months, which is what it is under the current Pgac. Based on Zia's calculations, the total cost to be recovered from Zia's customers is 18,594,000 approximately. The normal cost would have been for a February month would have been 1,892,000 approximately. And the extraordinary cost that they incurred was 16,702,000 approximately. The adjustment that Zia proposes of its Pgac gas cost factor is 0.8526 per CCF for its Hobbs and Jall customers, 0.7480 per CCF for its Lincoln County customers, and 0.4731 per CCF for its Doña customers. Zia does not propose an adjustment for its Maxwell customers. The application, as I said, proposes a 17-month recovery period that would align the final cost recovery at the end of the Pgac adjustment with Zia's October 1st, 2022 annual Pgac reconciliation. Zia states that would be most administratively efficient and would mitigate bill impacts for customers. The application states that Zia rejected an accelerated 12-month recovery period due to larger bill impacts in customers, and rejected a longer recovery period because Zia intends to pay down the loan more quickly in order to save interest expense and to release the utility from the limitations imposed by the financing. The application states that Zia's proposed 17-month Pgac adjustment balances customer and utility interests and requests that it be approved. The reason that Zia is requesting expedited action, and I'll get to the schedule that Zia requested in a moment, is because Zia has already incurred the debt. The financing closed on April 1st, and now Zia must begin repaying the loan. Zia proposes to implement the Pgac adjustment for its June 2021 billing for volumes sold in May 2021, and therefore requests a commission approval date by May 26, 2021. Zia's request also requests certain variances, and the proposed order finds that staff and interveners should file a reply by May 13th, recommending approval or approval with conditions or disapproval. 2, recommending, if the recommendation is approval with conditions, detailing the conditions that should be satisfied. 3, if the recommendation is disapproval, state the reasons why. And 4, whether or not a hearing should be held on Zia's application, and what other documentation the commission might need. And the following, and in addition to that, the proposed order does state that by May 5th, Zia shall respond to the following questions. And these are questions that were proposed by Commissioner Maestas. The questions are, what would be the effect on Zia's ability to timely repay its loan in accordance with the terms of the loan agreement if the cost recovery period were extended by 13 months to 30 months to alleviate rate shock? And if the answer to question number 1 is that Zia would be unable to timely repay its loan, then what's the longest recovery period that Zia would be able to propose beyond the 17 months to alleviate rate shock? And in addition, there is one more question, which is, I just have to find it, sorry. What would allow Zia to meet its intention stated in the proposed notice filed in this case to prepay the loan to minimize interest costs? So those are all questions that Zia would need to answer by May 5th. But the proposed schedule in your order would be that Zia would immediately publish notice on its website, and as soon as possible, publish notice in the Albuquerque Journal. Interveners would need to intervene on or before May 12th. Direct testimony by interveners and staff would be due on May 13th. Rebuttal testimony would be due on May 19th. A proposed final order would be filed by Zia on May 21st. And a public hearing either presided over by the commission or by a designated presiding officer that could be designated by a single signature order of one commissioner would occur on May 26, 2021. In addition, public comment by persons not intervening would, or not protesting, would be allowed to be taken at the May 26, 2021 meeting. And I believe that's all the important information, and I stand for questions.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hall.
So I have a couple of questions. Judy, when I was comparing the proposed order that we first saw that came out with the first issuance of the proposed agenda with the modifications made after Commissioner Maestas made some, I thought there was just one question that was added, which is what would allow Zia to meet its intention stated it in the proposed notice filed in this case to prepay the loan to minimize interest costs.
Yeah, the
So
other.
I thought that was a good
Excuse me.
question, but I thought that wasn't in the original. So anyhow, there are 3 questions when originally there were 2. And the other 2 were the same. Correct?
Yes, but the other 2 were also originally were suggested by Commissioner Maestas.
Oh, okay.
But the 3rd one was also suggested by Commissioner Maestas.
Okay, fine. And what I wanted to ask was, do you feel this schedule provides adequate time for parties to meet the deadlines, particularly the interveners?
I think that if anyone protests and intervenes and states that they need more time, the commission can reassess it at that point.
Okay. I think that's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, did I see you flash there?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the order as presented with a possibility to have the public hearing on May the 26th, 2021.
And I'll second that. I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, does the motion include the order, the version with my questions? And only because if you saw the rate impact table, the rate shock's substantial for the Hobbs-Jowl area and Lincoln County, ranging anywhere from 59% to 85%. And so I just want to get that clarification. And if not, I really would appreciate maybe a friendly amendment to include those questions that I placed in my version of the order. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I thought that was the order that we were talking about because that's.
Yeah, you're correct, Commissioner Hall.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, was that what your motion was for the version with
Yes.
the questions in it?
Yes, our general counsel's office disclosed the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, good. So we have a motion and a second, and it includes the Commissioner Maestas questions. Any further discussion? Okay, Mike, please take the roll.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
Commissioner Fishman.
Aye.
Commissioner Hall.
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas.
Aye. Aye.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Aye.
Commissioners, the proposed order is approved by a vote of 5-0.
Okay.
Is anybody else getting that echo from Commissioner Maestas?
I haven't.
You're not getting 2 ayes? Aye. Aye.
Oh.
Commissioner Maestas, speak.
I did hear that.
Sorry about that. I
go ahead.
I'm participating by phone now, so
Okay.
I can't. I don't know if you're hearing me or not. So I'll try and wait until I unmute and then I'll speak.
Okay. Just to warn you, you can say aye as many times as you want, Commissioner Maestas, but it's only 1 vote.
That's right.
So we're on to item number 8, docket 21, 31, the matter of Public Service Company of New Mexico's application for approval of 2 purchase power agreements and an energy storage agreement pursuant to 17.9.551 NMAC, an addendum to the special service contract with Greater Kudu LLC and amended rider number 49. And Judith, this is yours.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this matter comes before you today upon the application of Public Service Company of New Mexico for approval of an amended special service contract with Greater Kudu LLC for the approval of 2 purchase power agreements and for the approval of advice notice number 574. And upon the initial order that was issued by the commission in this matter on February 17th, 2021, where the commission partially granted P&M's motion for expedited consideration. In that order, there were deadlines set whereby staff had to file direct testimony by April 14th. And any interveners or protesters had to protest by March 31st, and rebuttal testimony to be filed by interveners, and P&M would need to be filed on April 21st, which was last Wednesday. And there was a tentative April 28th hearing schedule. After receiving a staff's testimony on April 14th and the rebuttal testimony on April 21st, the commission by single signature order vacated the April 28th hearing to determine a new schedule based upon both the direct and rebuttal testimony that the commission had just received. In addition, the advice notice number 574 was suspended for an initial period of 9 months on March 3rd. If you recall, the application requested approval of 2 purchase power agreements. One is an agreement with the NMRD 3 data center for 50 megawatts of solar energy from the Encino North Solar Energy Center. And the second PPA was an agreement with Sky Ranch Solar LLC for 190 megawatts of solar energy from the Sky Ranch Solar Facility. In addition, the application, those are pursuant to 17.9.551, which states that the commission has 6 months to act on the PPAs. Otherwise, they would be deemed approved. So that according to the rule, the deadline would be August 8th. But P&M asked for a June 1st approval date based upon its need to break ground on these projects. That being said, they also asked for approval of an energy storage agreement of 100 megawatts, Sky Ranch Energy Storage. And last, they requested an addendum to the second amended and restated special services contract, which was last amended in case number 18-00269. It's a contract between P&M and Facebook, which is a subsidiary of Greater Kudu. And they included the First Amendment rider number 49, production cost allocation. So the issue before you today is whether or not to have final approval or disapproval of this application by June 1st. That would be a very expedited schedule at this point. And for your consideration is a proposed order that would stretch out that approval period to the end of June rather than the beginning of the June. The basis for the extension of the schedule was on April 14th, Utility Division Director John Reynolds filed his testimony, and I'll quote, he said, "I have had some general concerns recently that too many cases before the commission are expedited, and this has made it challenging to carefully analyze the implications of issues at hand. Many of the recently expedited cases appear to involve P&M, and the reasons for expediting these cases may in isolation appear reasonable, such as the need to approve generation resources before P&M abandons the San Juan generating facility on June 30th, 2022, a little more than a year from now. However, I am becoming particularly concerned with the pattern of expediting all of the cases involving P&M. And Mr. Reynolds uses the term the customer, but the term the customer is Facebook. So I am becoming particularly concerned with the pattern of expediting all of the cases involving P&M and the customer, and the resulting expectation that P&M and the customer may have that its cases will be handled swiftly simply because who P&M and the customer are. It is also questionable whether the urgency for a final order in this case was necessary to begin with. Both of the generating facilities at issue have been on the drawing board since late 2019. The request for proposals was issued in June 2020. P&M's application was not filed until February 2021. It seems like the application could have been filed earlier. I recommend that the commission extend the procedural schedule sufficiently to allow for a public hearing before a hearing examiner. This matter involves a number of complex issues which are not suited to a hearing before the commission with an expedited procedural schedule. The commission should refrain from expediting future cases where the customer Facebook may select resources in the absence of compelling reasons to do so. Therefore, based upon staff's concern, the proposed order finds that the commission needs additional time to consider the application. And that in order to balance the interests of staff's concerns and request additional time to review and consider the application, it should endeavor to issue a final order sometime in June of 2021, that it should hold a public hearing before the commission, which should be presided over by a designated hearing examiner. The hearing examiner would not issue a recommended decision. Rather, after the public hearings, the parties would either individually or jointly submit proposed recommended decisions for the commission to consider. The proposed order would provide for a public hearing to be held on June 16th, would provide all discovery to be complete by May 26th, all direct testimony on June 2nd, pre-filed rebuttal testimony on June 9th, proposed recommended decisions on June 23rd. And public comment would be by members of the public who did not protest or intervene could be taken at the commencement of the commission's regular open meeting on June 16th. And I stand for questions. I know that Commissioner Maestas proposed a different order with different dates. And if he would like, this might be the time for him to propose his dates, but however you decide to handle this, I stand for questions.
Commissioner Maestas, why don't you present your dates and then we can discuss.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I mean, I understand the delay associated with P&M's actions, but if you start from the application timeline, the application was submitted on February 8th, and we submitted an initial order expediting the procedural schedule. And I realized staff provided testimony on April 14th, but you know, I'm a little concerned that staff didn't really speak up before, you know, we acted on the initial order on February 17th. And if they had concerns regarding any complexities associated with these projects, that it should have been brought forward perhaps even in March, well before the deadline for their testimony. And so I'm just a little concerned about the about face. And I'm also mindful that I believe this is the third project associated with the expansion of the Facebook data center. And I wasn't here for the previous ones, but based on staff testimony, at least it implies that those were expedited as well. And so my point is, this is an initial application for an expansion project for renewable energy associated with the data center. And I think we need to be mindful of the impact on their construction schedule, which is June 1st. And so my order just simply reduces the proposed extended procedure by 10 days that would allow us to take action by June 2nd, which would minimize the impacts to the construction schedule, but yet still give staff additional time to review this. Not all the time that they're requesting in Judy's original order. And so I feel that this is a compromise, and it's a recognition that we are taking an about face, which is contrary to our initial order on February 17th, but yet we're also mindful of the construction schedule of this project, which, as we all know, it's a very important project to the area, to the state, hell, to the country. So I hope that the commission would just consider my compromise order in essentially reducing the time in every single milestone by about 10 days, which again would allow us to render a decision on June 2nd. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Discussion from commissioners.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I just wanted to ask a question. I appreciate what Commissioner Maestas is trying to do. I understand, yes, we did do an about face, but I certainly do appreciate John's concerns as well. And I was here when we did the other expedited proceedings. And frankly, I was starting to feel a little concerned about it because we were just always expediting. And I agree with John's concern that it looked like favoritism when probably the company could have come in earlier. So I share that concern, but I also appreciate that there could be adverse impacts on going forward with the project. And I just wanted to ask Commissioner Maestas, what's the consequence if we were to stick to the original schedule that Judy had proposed, and we didn't give those extra 10 days? Is there a cost associated with that gets passed on to the consumers? Do we know what it is? Just give me some background there about the adverse consequence on their construction schedule. What does that amount to besides a change of date? There must be some other consequences like costs, right? Mr. Maestas? Is he there?
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. I guess the question is for John. I don't know if he can answer it. The frustrating thing is I couldn't talk to John, but it was my understanding that staff could conduct their review well within the originally proposed timeframe. So I guess it would be up to staff. And I might add, if you look at the record on this project, the interveners have not protested this at all. I think if interveners had protested it, I would not have recommended a truncation of a proposed longer procedure on this. So I just think it's the right thing to do. But I guess if staff can indicate if this reduction of about 10 days would not allow them to conduct a full review, then I'll respect that and just withdraw consideration of my order and revised procedure.
Can we ask that question of staff? Mr. Chair, maybe Michael Smith could answer that question. Is it appropriate? Can we ask that question?
To the extent you're asking if staff has sufficient time, I think that's appropriate.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to ask that question then of John.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, could I just check? I don't mind answering your question, but I just want to check to make sure Brad is on the call. He was the attorney assisting me on the case.
Yeah,
I am here.
Okay. Brad, would you like me to start, or did you want to start?
Well, I'll let you go ahead, but I mean, I do think that, you know, as Mike has suggested, I think a lot of this should be already within the record. But if I think as far as going forth and just saying, you know, if you need more time or need, you know, what amount of time is sufficient, I think that's fine.
That's the question. What amount of time is sufficient? Is this time sufficient? Are the original dates or the only ones you can work with that Judy proposed in her original order, or can you work with do you have sufficient time with the dates proposed by Commissioner Maestas?
And I think that the 10 days don't sound like much, but you know, it's 10 days less than, you know, a less truncated schedule. I would say my initial reaction to the schedules, the alternatives, is I had hoped to submit some discovery to the utility, and if they're willing to expedite responses to the discovery, that might be an issue. And then the other issue is in deference to the hearing examiners. I mean, as I recommended, I mean, I think this hearing should be before the hearing examiners, and I think the hearing examiners will need some time to consider to consider what's being evidenced at the hearing and react to it. So that, you know, those are my initial thoughts at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just not sure. Well, I don't want to speak about the construction crews. I mean, I don't have any information about the impact of a delay in the construction, other than that it would delay investment in the state, you know, and I recognize that's that consequence.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other commissioner input. Commissioner, is that Vicente Aguilar?
No, it's Maestas.
Oh, okay. The phone has me all confused. Go ahead.
Sorry, since we have, you know, John, I was wondering if I could just ask John, what has changed since the initial order in staff's mind regarding the complexity of this case? What was the discovery? When was it made? And I mean, obviously you feel strongly about it. You're compelled to go back and revise our procedural order. But what happened since our initial order and the application?
Well, I think that goes a little bit beyond the permissible, you know, inquiry as to whether staff needs additional time and is okay with the schedule. Getting into the substance of staff's objections really shouldn't be. I think we start to run into ex parte issues here. This is not for a hearing; it's set for an order.
Okay. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
So I have a couple comments, but Commissioner Byrd or Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, before I go, do you guys have thoughts, input?
Mr.
Chair. Ladies first.
I'll start with Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Mr. Chair, I'm listening to all versions, so I'll remain quiet. Thank you.
Commissioner Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's an old adage that failure to plan on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. It is concerning to me that there's so many projects coming in that they're requesting expedited service. With the winter weather event, it made sense that we're going to expedite some of those issues because that was something not planned for. Wasn't on their schedule to have that cold event that week or anybody else's. But a lot of this other stuff is on their schedule. It is planned to be built. And so I have a problem with expediting anything that's just normal business operation. And we all appreciate Facebook coming to New Mexico. We shouldn't even have to state it, but we do because otherwise somebody will twist your words. But they should also appreciate that the rules are being followed. We're doing our due diligence, making sure that all interests are taken when we set these things up. We got to look at ratepayers. We need to be able to look at PNM's business model on this and to make sure it's not going to adversely affect people that may, unintended consequences may end up paying for something they shouldn't have. I tend to lean with Mr. Reynolds on this. But again, we'll go back to Commissioner Vicente Aguilar's question on our first issue a while ago. There's good questions being asked, and I think Commissioner Maestas is asking good questions. Is there a way we can put this in quicker? So my personal view after having talked to Commissioner Maestas and hearing what we're hearing today is that we go with the order proposed by Ms. Amir, and we just simply ask that they be mindful, that our staff, hearing examiner, all be mindful of PNM schedule, and PNM will then in return, I think, the sooner they can respond to our requests, the sooner we can deal with those issues that are presented in those requests. And so I think they will also be mindful, of course, of their own schedule, and we try to get it done ASAP. But I think we need to make sure that everything is, as I said before, all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted properly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Byrd. For my own part, I tend to agree that Judy's schedule is the better way to go. I'm perfectly willing if we can get the information we need more quickly to move that up if we can. But I started putting together a bench request, and because nobody protested, and that left a dearth of testimony. And I feel like I don't have enough of a record that I can make a decision. And I have to admit that I do not understand the addendum and its impact. And before I can vote for this, and I know that Facebook has said the addendum, PNM has said the addendum is critical as part of the approval. Boy, how can I take a vote unless I understand that? So the bottom line is I just don't feel like I have enough of a record that I can make a responsible vote or decision on behalf of the public. And, I think Judy's schedule gives us the best chance of getting there. I know because there's kind of a dearth of testimony and it leaves so many questions unasked for me, I've got a list of 10 questions with lots of subparts that I think can be pretty quickly answered, but that I need to know the answers before I can, in good conscience, make a vote. So we just need time to do that and get a response and clarify the response. I too am grateful for Facebook. Facebook has, you made a big commitment to New Mexico. So I'm very much aware of that. And like you, Commissioner Byrd, you know, I want to be sure we respect that. But on the other hand, we have to fulfill our duty to perform due diligence on behalf of the public. And I think Judy's schedule is the best way for us to get there.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Hall.
I just want to say I concur in everything you said, having looked at some of the testimony and thinking that there, you know, there's some questions I have, and I want to add, you invited us to add our questions to your list. I want to do that. Yes, maybe our staff didn't respond as quickly as they might have, but I think they probably did respond as quickly as they could. And I think that's something that even Facebook, who of course we appreciate, I'm coming to the state, Facebook can understand we are very, very heavily loaded with work. So I think we have to proceed in a way that provides, you know, the delivery of our services to all the people who are entitled to it, which includes the public. And we need to take the time to do that. And, you know, I understand the company had a deadline, well, a date by which they wanted to break ground, but I didn't see any testimony about any consequences that would flow if they didn't break ground. Usually there's some money involved that, you know, they're going to incur a cost, but they came to the state willing to incur the cost of their project. So I don't know, and without any information about that right now, I don't know if that should be something we take into consideration. Although I appreciate Commissioner Maestas's concern for that, and I share it to some extent, to the extent I have any information about it. But I think what I do know is that we need to provide enough time to address staff's concern and provide adequate time for hearing examiners to react. I noticed that this order requires well, there was two versions. Judy's version did not specify who would be submitting the proposed recommended decision. And Commissioner Maestas has said that P&M would be submitting a proposed recommended decision, but neither order provided for the hearing examiner to write the recommended decision, and that's probably for the purpose of trying to save time. We don't usually do it that way. I won't oppose it this time, but I think, you know, generally I prefer for the hearing examiners to be the ones to write the recommended decision. So I'm slightly uncomfortable with it. However, they probably will have the ability to modify it. And Judy wants.
I just want to clarify. In the order that was in your packet, I proposed having each party submit a proposed recommended decision.
Oh, that's correct. Or
in the event that the parties agree, they could file a joint proposed recommended decision.
Correct.
The only reason I did not have the hearing examiner do the recommended decision is because that would delay it.
Right.
And the commission can certainly do that. They could have the hearing examiner, and then the hearing examiner could expedite exceptions and responses. But I think that would probably move a final decision at least until July at some point. And without actually hearing from Ashley regarding hearing examiner availability, I really can't make a recommendation one way or the other on how long that would take. But it would take longer. That's all I know.
Correct. I agree. And so that's why I was saying I wouldn't oppose that in this case. And I forgot that part about how you permitted everybody to submit, you know, any other parties. That can be very helpful to the hearing examiner to have, you know, analyses already written out for them to adopt. So I thought it was not a bad idea at all. It's just departs from what we regularly do, but it's okay. So I guess I would go with the calendar that Judy provided as well. I think we need every day we can get just to be sure we're doing our job. And hopefully, as Commissioner Byrd mentioned, the company will appreciate that we're, you know, we have our responsibilities we have to discharge, and maybe they'll be sensitive to that in the future. So, thanks.
Okay, with any further discussion? Mike, well, why don't we take a vote?
Did we have a motion and second?
We need a motion. Excuse me, I'm rushing.
Right. Okay, so Mr.
So
Chair.
I will.
Go ahead, Commissioner Byrd.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will move Judy's motion. Order.
I'll second it. I'll second it.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, Mike, now we can take the roll.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Fishman,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
The proposed order is adopted by a vote of 5-0.
And John and staff, I just want to say thank you for raising the issues in your testimony. It's much appreciated by the commission.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, on to item number 9. Docket number 21, Triple Lot 95. And in the matter of New Mexico Gas Company Incorporated application for expedited variance approving its plan for recovery of the gas costs related to the 2021 winter event. And Michael, this one is yours.
Commissioners, this is what we have before you is New Mexico Gas Company's request for an expedited approval of a variance to allow New Mexico Gas Company to change the methodology under which it recovers the cost of gas through its purchased gas adjustment clause, as you just stated, in response to the $110 million increase in the cost of gas that was incurred by New Mexico Gas Company during the 6 days of the February 2021 cold weather event. This is very much like the application that was discussed earlier, filed by Zia Natural Gas. New Mexico Gas Company's application sets forth in quite a bit of detail the various efforts the gas company engaged in attempting to secure gas supplies from a variety of sources available to it, including what it most heavily relied on, which were its reserves of stored gas held by Kinder Morgan in Texas, which it was denied access to due to Kinder Morgan's invoking of the force majeure clause in its contract with New Mexico Gas Company. The gas company was ultimately forced to resort to other swing resources, including purchases on the day-ahead market and ultimately significant purchases on the intraday market, which each of which is progressively more expensive and exposed the gas company to significant expense that there is now at issue. I'm not going to go into more detail on that because that's to those efforts, rather because it's quite a bit of testimony and very complicated. And the issue that's really before us right now is initiating this hearing on the application. Gas company is trying to recover the $110 million excess costs from customers over a period of 30 months, which would commence from July 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2023. Normally, under its existing purchase gas adjustment clause, these costs would be recovered between April and August 31st, 2021. It indicates that if it tried to recover this $110 million from customers during its normal purchase gas adjustment clause period, the charges to residential ratepayers with an average usage would be approximately $56 a month in April and down to $19 per month by the end of that period in August. Gas company indicates that it has financed the payment of this $110 million excess cost with a $100 million loan using its existing short-term revolving credit. That loan was obtained at the floating LIBOR, which is the London Interbank Offering Rate, plus 65 basis points. And that covers the period from March 25th, 2021 through September 23rd, 2022. The gas company indicates that the loan is prepayable without penalty, but will need to be renegotiated or replaced prior to the expiration of the 18-month term of that short-term loan. Gas company indicates that the short-term debt is a substantial increase to its existing $385 million in overall debt, and therefore proposes to fold this amount into its long-term debt in order to maintain the gas company's ability to access additional short-term financing if necessary to meet any needs that might arise, including potentially another cold weather event next year, which might occur during the 30-month period over which it's proposing to recover these cold weather event costs. It's also seeking to avoid a negative effect on its credit rating. Gas company indicates that it's seeking approval to recover a carrying charge on the $110 million at its average cost of debt, which is 3.7%, dating from the date that it assumed that short-term loan, which was March 25th, 2021, when it paid the gas invoices. The gas company seeks to recover the purchase gas adjustment costs related to the winter weather event from both residential and non-residential customers through a seasonally adjusted per therm charge, which would be applicable to all customers using a seasonally adjusted factor applicable only to the extraordinary cold weather event costs, not to any costs that would be incurred otherwise. To mitigate the impact of collecting the extraordinary gas costs, the gas company proposes to apply a lower recovery rate factor to residential customers for the months of October through April when gas usage is high, and a slightly higher factor during the low usage months of May through September. The intent behind that is that this rate design would level out the monthly impacts on residential customers regardless of the season and usage. The gas company estimates that for an average residential customer with an average annual usage of 659 therms, the seasonal adjustment would result in bill impacts of $8.84 in January when customers are using the most gas, and $4.20 in July when they're using less. The gas company estimates that without this seasonal adjustment, the bill impact would experience less leveling and would experience a range from a high of $12.89 in January to a low of $1.50 in July. It does not propose to do the same seasonal adjustment for non-residential ratepayers because it asserts that rates for non-residential ratepayers do not vary by season, since the usage by the majority of non-residential customers is generally not weather sensitive. The gas company also indicates that it will credit customers with any amounts that may be recovered through the Attorney General or other investigations that are currently taking place into the cold weather events and the impact on the gas market. The gas company also indicates that it's looking at its own legal options at this time, but is mindful of not damaging its relationship with its suppliers. I have attached a proposed form of order, rather of notice with a schedule. I'm trying to find it. I've got too many dockets open here. Documents open. It would set a public hearing on this application on June 9th, 2021, consistent with the gas company's request for a final order by June 16th, 2021. I've taken pains to try and avoid conflicting too much with the other proposed procedural orders that were before you today. So June 9th would fall between those two other ones. It would provide for an intervention date on or before May 17th, 2021. It would require the filing of testimony by May 18th, 2021. That's response testimony to New Mexico Gas Company's testimony included with its application. Rebuttal testimony would be required by May 28th, 2021, and a form of proposed final order, as we were just discussing, would be due on June 1st, 2021, which would give us about a week before the public hearing on the 9th. I think that's basically covers the bulk of the provisions. So if you have questions, I'm ready to answer them.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to ask Mike for those dates again, because in the version I've got, they're blank. I got the May 28th. What were the other ones before that, Mike? There are two others.
I did send out a revision yesterday when I looked at worked out the schedule. So you do have a copy of that in your email box.
Can you just tell me right now what those two dates are you just said prior to the May 28th one? I'll write it into what I already have printed out.
So the testimony would be, intervention date is May 17th, 2021. Okay. Testimony is due May 18th, 2021.
Got it.
Rebuttal testimony is due May 28th, 2021.
Got it.
And the public hearing would be held on June 9th, 2021.
On June 9th?
Yes.
Oh, I better print out your new thing. Okay.
And that would give the commission the opportunity to potentially issue a final order on June 9th if it chose to, or it would provide for another week if it wanted to try and consider some of the issues that it heard and issue a final order by June 16th, 2021 at its next.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I thought there were some revisions provided by Commissioner Maestas. Is that correct?
I did not receive revisions to the proposed order.
Maybe I'm looking at the wrong order. Okay,
Nope,
fine.
no revisions submitted.
Okay, good. I think I have printed out something wrong. Okay, well, Mr. Chair, I would move the order. I think this looks like a reasonable schedule.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Commissioner Byrd has a second. If there's no further discussion, Mike, please take the roll.
I'll start with you, Commissioner Fishman.
Aye.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Aye.
Commissioner Hall.
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas.
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
The proposed procedural order is adopted by a vote of 5-0.
Okay, we're on to discussion and potential action items. Number 10. And potential action to redelegate state records and archives rule filing authority. I don't have a name here for who's going to discuss this. So Whoever would like to step up and begin that discussion, please do.
Mr. Chairman, I can actually address it. It's basically, this was generated out of our office. I'm trying to find the document. This is kind of a routine task. We're required to have signatures or an authorized persons identified with the state records division for purposes of filing documents that are required to be issued through the state records division. So we periodically, whenever the authorized persons change, such as in this case, the chief of staff has changed, we need to send over a new notification to the division of record, excuse me, the records division with that person's authorized signature. And so that's what this does. So basically, I'll read it to you. It says that this letter serves as an update of signatures on file with the Commission of Public Records to comply with Rule 124.10.10, issuing authority. Section 8815 authorizes the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission to adopt and file such reasonable and procedural rules and regulations as be necessary to carry out the duties of the department and its divisions. We hereby authorize Wayne Probst, Chief of Staff, and Michael C. Smith, Acting General Counsel, to sign the transmittal form for filing rules as the signing authority on behalf of the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. And it provides that the document can be executed in a number of counterparts for ease of service.
Okay. And no action to take on this, just an update for our information?
This would require the signatures of the commissioners. So
okay.
Yes, I would say we should put it to a vote that the commission will adopt this.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move.
So, second.
We've got a motion and a second. Lacking further discussion, Mike, please call the roll.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas.
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
Commissioner Hall.
Aye.
Commissioner Fishman.
Aye.
And so the letter is adopted and it will be, I guess, I'm not sure how we're doing this, if we're going to require actual signatures, I believe, is what state records. So I believe Isaac will forward the document or ask you to print it out and execute it and have it sent back. If I'm incorrect with that, I will let you know.
Sounding good. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. We're down to item 11, communications with Chief of Staff. Wayne, do you have anything to share?
Just a few things, Mr. Chairman. It was good morning earlier. Now it's good afternoon. Closing in on the second week here at the commission. I think I've noted to most of you that I've had an opportunity to have individual meetings with all of the division directors. Had at least one opportunity to meet with their staffs as well, and that will continue. Also, I've had an opportunity to meet with the majority of you, commission individually, and hope to wrap that up this week. And thank you for your time on that. Big items, of course, are the submission of our operating budget that you've already talked about and been briefed on. That'll occur on Monday. Also expect to have a follow-up visit to the Bochum building Monday morning at 11 o'clock to see what kind of progress has been made on those renovations. I did receive an email from the landlord this morning indicating that they have made some progress. So looking forward to seeing what that is. And of course, we'll report to the commission and staff what we see on Monday morning. And other than that, Mr. Chairman, the Legislative Finance Committee is holding its first meeting this week. I think they meet Thursday and Friday. We're not on the agenda, of course, but that does mean that the interim legislative process is kicking off already. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I really don't have a whole lot else, but happy to answer any question from commissioners.
I guess I have an information request. Now that the legislative session is over, we know which bills are signed. I think it wouldn't be a bad idea for someone on staff to identify all of the new legislation that's been passed and note any particular actions that we as a commission need to take, be it rulemaking or something else in response to that legislation.
Okay. Happy to do that, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. And that actually jogs my memory a little bit. Mr. Chairman, you had also asked staff to look at our processes and procedures and gaps in terms of compliance with commission orders. We did have a meeting on that this week, Mr. Chairman. I want to let you know that we did follow through on that. We'll have another meeting, I anticipate, next week with the intent to report to the commission at its May 12th meeting.
Terrific, thank you. Any other commissioner questions or thoughts?
Mr. Chair.
Wayne?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a comment. Wayne, we started a dialogue with the legislature when we presented on our FY22 budget. What we did present in conjunction with that presentation was our needs. And so you and I have had a conversation about the need to perhaps come up with a plan leading up to the next session to really create awareness of the budget needs of the PRC. And so maybe perhaps at one of the meetings in the future, we can talk about what standing committees and even legislative leadership that we can work with and get in front of to really explain the true needs and how and build a case basically for our FY23 budget request.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Miesis, I think that is a timely effort to begin now, as opposed to waiting until later in the summer or later in the interim. So I'm happy to do some thinking about that and continue to consult with you and the commission and try to come up with a plan for that outreach.
Thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Hall.
Kind of along those lines, I think it would be probably in our interest to come up with a strategy to attend and maybe present to interim committees on substantive policy matters too, that may arise, either that we're facing or that may arise by the legislature, or we've heard it will arise, and simply let them know we'd like to be part of the conversation when there's the possibility of legislation being passed that's going to impinge on our activities and give us a lot more work when we're not prepared for it. I mean, I think it's something that kind of goes hand in hand with letting them understand our budget situation, is understand our workload, and that we want to be willing partners, but we need to be equipped to do the work. So I think it might even strengthen our argument about trying to enhance our budget if we can make it clear to them how much work we actually do.
Go forward to, I guess I'm echoing there.
Yeah.
Anyway, as we go through the year, Wayne, please feel comfortable putting together a strategy, timing, who from the commission might help you in presenting this stuff, and certainly with your experience, I feel very comfortable with you taking the lead and helping orchestrate how the commission presents its issues and when. And I just want you to feel comfortable putting a plan together for us, and asking for the information you need to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will feel comfortable doing that. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, let's move on to communications with general counsel. Okay, with that, let's move on to communications with commissioners. No, Mike, I'm going to come back to you. Here we go.
Now, I'll spare you me, but I believe Judy has an issue. She wants to talk about scheduling the revocation hearing that is scheduled currently, I believe, for the 16th.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I think originally we had discussed having the revocation hearing on June 9th. In accordance with Mike's order in the gas company case, I think there's a hearing scheduled for that 21-00095 case on June 9th, right, Mike?
Yes, that's correct.
And then in accordance with the order in the 21-00031 case, there's a hearing on June 16th. So we can have the revocation hearing also on the 9th. They usually don't take very long, or we could postpone it until June 30th. It's really up to the commission.
Mr. Chair, I need Judy, what's the case number of the revocation case?
They usually open a docket called 21-401. I'm not.
Okay.
It's not on the agenda. I was just trying to determine a date to schedule it so that they can provide the 30-day notice, meaning the transportation division staff.
Okay. And what was the number of the case that had the hearing on the 6th? 21-00096?
No, on June 9th.
That would be 95, 2195.
Okay, and then what was that you said there was something, another case had a hearing on the 6th. What was that?
On the 16th,
oh,
June 16th, it was 21-00031.
Oh, 31, yeah. Okay, thanks. So the question is, do we want the revocation hearing on the same day as on case 2195, right?
Yes, that is one question. Or do we want to move it to a day when there's no other hearings?
How long do you anticipate each hearing will take?
Well, from past experience, the revocation hearings usually take about 15 minutes.
Oh yeah, transportation revocation,
Yes.
yeah.
The other cases that are scheduled, I think, will take substantially longer. It really depends on, certainly with case 95, how many interveners there are and what the nature of the testimony is.
What do you recommend?
The revocation hearing has the greatest flexibility to be moved, but
Mr. Chair.
I would recommend having the revocation hearing on a separate date. It would simplify things. The June 23rd appears to be a date when there's no other hearings.
Okay.
Commissioner Byrd?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know in times past when we've done these, nobody has participated online or in person to make comments, but in the off chance that somebody was, I would hate to have them wait in either hearing for additional hearing to complete. So do it on a different date would be my recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mr. Chair, I'd go along with that.
Yeah, and I do too.
Yeah. So Judy suggests the 23rd for the hearing in case 21-00095, correct, Judy?
No, Commissioner Hall, the June 23rd would be the revocation hearing. That's the transportation docket. That's 21-401.
Oh.
On the 9th is 2195, which is gas company. And on the 16th is 2131, which is P&M.
Great. So that's, the last two are set, and the proposal is to move the revocation hearing to the 23rd rather than the 9th, so we won't have them both on the same day.
That's my recommendation.
Yeah. So, and like I say, Mr. Chairman, I would go along with that. I think that's what Commissioner Byrd was saying too.
Correct. Any further discussion on this one? Judy, do you have what you need?
Yes, thank you.
Terrific. And Mike, do you have anything to cover here?
No, I think we're good. We just need to make sure we're not piling too many things up on the plate on one day.
Right. Okay, communications with commissioners.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hall.
I would just like to say, I think that I'll be able to bring the proposed rule on the integrated resource plan, procurement plan, integrated resource plan and procurement proposed rule to the commission next week. I understand that Colin and Robert are cleaning it up with the final touches, and we'll be able to review it and get it on the docket by Friday, hopefully. I mean, get it on the agenda by Friday.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Terrific. Other commissioner comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Maestas.
Yeah, just have a couple of quick things. Just a reminder, tomorrow we have our workshop on the disconnection moratorium. It starts at 9:30. The agenda is posted on the PRC website. Judy and Jonas will be assisting me in conducting the workshop just to assess the status, see how, and this is for small utilities and co-ops. This does not include IOUs. And this is just an assessment in the run-up to the May 5th date in which the moratorium expires on disconnections. And then the only other thing I had was we've had great conversations with MNERD's Energy Conservation and Management Division. They're very involved in transportation electrification through the Governor's Climate Action Transportation Group. And so they're eager to work with us on not just transportation electrification, but other initiatives. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Terrific, good to hear. Other commissioner comments? Okay, I've got one, and that is that there's an outfit called GridWorks, which has had a lot of experience on grid modernization projects across the country. And they've contacted me, and we've put together just a short proposal to send to the Department of Energy to see if we can get a grant of up to $400,000 to help us with grid modernization planning and projects. And so I just wanted to alert the commission that we'll be sending out a proposal this week, and that when we do, all the commissioners will be copied. So, and major staff. So we'll see what happens with it. I think the DOE is, with the new administration, is looking at ways to help push grid modernization, and that there may be money available that hasn't been available in the past. So that's pretty much it for me.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Commissioner Hall.
So that sounds like something that might trigger some more rulemaking at some point, or do you know?
Well, that wouldn't trigger more rulemaking, but it might provide resources to help complete rulemakings.
That sounds good. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, with that, I think we're ready to adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And by the way,
See y'all later.
thank you, Sarah. A very good job running the screen your first time through.
Yep,
Thank you,
did
Mr.
good.
Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, everybody.